let's start with what the super hit movie 12th Fail, brought out in a very, very beautiful manner, which was the idea of restart. An excellent movie that we saw once during in the new year, thinking that it'll motivate my kids, it'll like inspire them to stop cribbing at least, or do more difficult stuff to like stop playing on the PS4. That didn't happen. But at least what I know now is that a lot of you in the back, kids are thinking, is that what his kids have to put up with? So jokes aside, the movie 12th Start talks to us about something which is very important. It talks to us about reassessment and the paramount importance of re-looking at what we are doing at any given time of life. For those of you who have been living under a rock and have no idea about what this movie is, it's about Manoj Kumar Sharma, this person who had incredible odds that he had to go against. So uneducated, check, marginalized, check, very poor, check, 12th fail, check, and going against all of these odds takes one of the most competitive exams that we have in our country, the UPSC, and then comes out on tops, becomes an IPS officer of great repute. And I mean, it's a true story, so no reason for me to be spinning the yarn here. But the important part is that he and countless others like him take it on their chin, go out there, pick themselves up, and continue to work hard every day and come out tops. You know why? Because they have no option. They can't afford an option. They're okay to fail, but they are not okay to give up without trying. Which also brings us to a very interesting concept that we have, which we actually like. We write books about it. I don't generally necessarily like it, but the concept of jugaad. Now that's a resourceful and cheap hack to something that might otherwise have a very expensive solution, but hey, jugaad works because it resets an established narrative. You need an expensive solution. Look at ISRO. ISRO can come up with stuff at 1/10 the cost because you have to question that narrative and say, why is it that we have to do this thing in a certain way, which is what our theme is about: control or delete. When pressed together, now if you check, if you go to AI, go to Google, whatever, and you check what control or delete does, it gives you a lot of options. It does not do what it was earlier doing, and in my era, which is a different era now, bygone, but it did a soft reset, and before my time, it did a hard reset. You did control alt boom, it shut down. All unsaved stuff was lost, but it was reset. Either way, today, when we are talking here, we are saying that a control alt delete means a reset. Reset for all the students here, figuratively and literally, is a very difficult concept. I don't think kids understand what reset really means, and which is something that I fear. And I fear also because, you have to go by all the Instagram stories, and, reset doesn't feature anywhere there. If we break down these components of reset, of control alt delete, I have, using my creative brain, not AI, come up with this alternate way of looking at it. So take control, okay? So control via an alternate path and delete the current negative outcome, right? So control, alternate, and delete. In order to keep up with the world of 2050, you will not just need to invent new ideas and products. You will need to reinvent yourself again and again, says our author, the historian Yuval Noah Harari, in 21 lessons for the 21st century. He is younger than I am, not by much, but in any case, he can articulate concepts, verbalize them way better than I can, because they just keep going on and on in my head, but he can really put it down. Beautiful books. Now, he and others like him who actually mean well for humanity, and the organizers of this event today are all right when they assert and reassert the simple fact that we have to reassess the path that we are on. So somehow, somewhere, at some point of time, we have started looking down on failures, right? So the worst impacted, of course, are in here, in this room, the youngsters, the young students, kids, toddlers. But it's not as if we haven't had growth parameters. We've had growth parameters. We have had milestones. You check if a toddler was speaking, when the toddler started speaking, when a child started walking. And we had a watchtower concept where we were looking down and we were saying, is there a sign that something is not happening at the right time? We were checking milestones against parameters, and we were checking for if something went wrong. But from there, we have moved to becoming the keepers of perfection, so to say. We don't just strive towards an aim. We obsess over the ROI, the return on investment. The last time I heard this word, return on investment, the ROI, it was while talking to a friend, 17-year-old, during a very stressful situation. Probably because my son had gone to college and they were looking for some answers that could have come from me, but they can't because every kid is different. But the idea was, why was it stressful? Is because class 12, you've got to crack some college, you've got to get into, it starts with an Ivy League somewhere, and then it goes down to good colleges in the US, UK, Australia, etc., etc. There's a whole list of it. And the child otherwise is somebody who you would call a high performer, a well-mannered kid, sincere, all-rounder from a good school. But the pressure to secure an admission is so high that all of our thought is towards that, not towards the act of learning or getting an education, or becoming more empathetic, being able to connect with actual human beings. The question only is, can I get in somewhere quickly and get out somehow? The fact that the child would actually be able to follow their dream, would actually be instructed in something that they are interested in, goes ahead and has a successful professional life, a happy life, that's of little importance. And according to the parents, I'm sorry to say it, but they were happy to fund the education if the label justified it, which is where the whole concept of ROI came in. Truth is, as a society, we are in danger of doing away with perhaps the single most essential ingredient of success, which is Nishkam Karma. One of the most often repeated Bhagavad Gita lessons, where action, in the true sense of the word, action whose fruit is the act itself. What can be the possible outcomes of any action? You want it to go a certain way, it goes that way, great, positive. You want it to go a certain way, it doesn't go that way, it's a negative. The rest is all somewhere in the middle, it's kind of neutral. But we still have to give our best to every endeavor. This talk, the prefects here, the kids who are organizing, the organizers of this event, you have to give your best to everything. The core essence we have to realize from what Gita talks about is that we can only control our actions, we cannot control the outcomes. The outcomes are all dependent on a multitude of factors that we actually have no control over. So if things don't go right, we will be disappointed. If things don't turn out the way, we worked hard, we didn't get the marks that we were hoping for, we could be crushed. We could actually want to be the head boy or head girl, and we don't get it, even though we deserve to, it could be really devastating. But does it mean that we should not act at all? Is the only motivation to act is the knowledge of the result? The hope of it certainly is, but do we only act when we know, oh yeah, it's going to go right? The possibility of failure fills us with anxiety and stress. And for many of us, that stress on a regular basis it becomes a habit. We're always stressed. A habit that we can definitely do without, because it leads us to, medical issues and many other issues which are, psychological in nature, that our kids should not be put through. Why can't we change our path and try something else? Try a different strategy. Look at nature, right? It devised change as the only way to survive. I mean, you don't need me to tell you about evolution. That's how basically we are here as humans. Whether it's Darwin's scientific, postulation of survival of the fittest, or we're looking at a slightly more psychological, a philosophical way of looking at it and say, change is the only constant. But what we know is, and you've written about it, is that the butterfly is not born a butterfly. Metamorphosis. It has to go through 4 stages and difficult stages to become a butterfly. And that, what a journey it must be. Then why is it so difficult for us to apply the same thing to ourselves? Why do we have to be so hard on ourselves? In fact, the hardest on ourselves, forget anybody else. So why don't we ever leave room to give ourselves a second chance, an alternate path? The well-trodden path that you spoke about, I mean, it's a known path. It goes to a familiar destination, and all is well. But is it really where we want to go? I mean, it's a question that only you can answer. As competitive as today's scenario is, there is a huge advantage that the young people here have over my generation. The possibilities that exist today did not exist then. And what we have to realize is, and what we must inculcate in the students as well, is to respect your privilege. It's a privilege to have these possibilities. Try and do what your heart desires, and not just what your head is conditioned to believe. Let yourselves adapt a little bit, change, do something that you actually enjoy. I'm an economics graduate. I did an MBA to better my professional career, but I always loved radio, and I was involved in radio even before I had literally gotten out of college. But no matter how hard I tried, my career as a radio jockey just wouldn't take off. I mean, I just couldn't crack it. So although I was with radio, then I joined a large network and I got involved with their programming in Delhi, and then I took them national, and just when the whole digital was coming up, I helped them go digital nationally. Finally, I moved out of it, got into a startup as a co-founder. We got funded twice, and then it dutifully died. So, wrap that up. Now, after a long journey, I am here in publishing, resting a little bit and, enjoying myself in the process. So am I a rolling stone that gathers no moss? I don't know if moss is really worth gathering, but whatever. Or I'm able to play the cards that I was dealt with. I would definitely go with the latter. I have been able to pivot, which the point that has come here before. And as far as being on radio is concerned, it was a passion to be behind the mic, which just pre-COVID, I was able to do when I started doing audiobooks, and I still do audiobooks. And having done many of them, I am able to kind of enjoy that my desire to be behind the mic, happens. So I'm glad that I was able to stick it out with my passion. So my profession separate and my passion separate, and yet both of them are on somewhere. I mean, I think it brings me to the end of this piece where I started talking about somebody else, somebody who did not give up, who worked really hard, went against all the odds of the world, and finally came out tops, doing what they wanted to do. To me, who finally understood what I was dreaming about. Not radio, not marketing, not economics. It's the thrill of exploring new domains, learning new skills, languages, and covering fresh ground in this journey we call life. So I'm going to end with J. Krishnamurti. To live in the eternal present, there must be death to the past, to memory. In this death, there is timeless renewal. Action is the fruit.